The Honorable Chief Guest has joined.
जी सलाम सलमान भाई
जी अस्सलाम
Assalamualaikum, sir.
वालेकुम
With your permission, should we start?
प्लीज
Sir? Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Salman Rahman MP, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister for Private Investment and sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Honorable guests, Mr. Sirazul Islam, Executive Chairman of BIDA, Mr. Jashim Uddin, President FBCCI. I'm sorry to say that our other special guest, Mr. Fazlur Rahman, could not join us, Secretary PMO, because he is unfortunately taken ill, and I think is currently undergoing some medical tests. But he is aware of the program, obviously, and has sent us his very good wishes. Our honorable guest of honor, His Excellency Naoki, Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh, distinguished panelists, Ms. Rupali Haque, Chairman of Foreign Investors Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Bangladesh, Mr. Abul Kasem Khan, Chairman BILD, Mr. Rizwan Rahman, President, Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and our very own former president, Syed Nasim Manzur. I also note with great pleasure that some of our embassies overseas have joined the program, including those from Baghdad, from Tehran, from Bahrain, from Beirut, Athens, Jordan, and Lebanon, among others. Forgive me if I've missed any. Also Riyadh, I see. And Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to all of you on this lovely afternoon on behalf of MCCI and Policy Exchange to the launching event of the first ever Bangladesh Business Climate Index. It is the first time that such a country-specific business climate index is being published for Bangladesh, and it covers all 8 divisions and industries, which provide in total around 75% of our GDP. This is a very topical matter at the moment, because for the last several years we have been talking about several global indexes in which Bangladesh's performance has perhaps not reflected in truth the actual conditions for doing business and for making very good investment returns from Bangladesh. Bangladesh's growth trajectory, the economic growth trajectory, the social development trajectory, and where it stands today in light of where we wish to be in 2031 and in 2041, there is, we believe, a need for structured, regular collection of data, analysis of that data, and evidence-based input into the policy-making framework for Bangladesh, particularly for the business sector, so that informed business decisions can be made, which will contribute to the growth, the economic growth, and consequently the social development agenda that we have set for ourselves. Bangladesh's performance in these has been remarkable in the last several decades, and we wish to contribute in a very positive and meaningful manner by launching this index, which we are calling BBX for short, to that growth trajectory. The importance of business indices cannot be understated, although recently there has been some discussion, some controversy about the interpretation of data in some of those indices, particularly global indices where issues have to be brought down to very low common denominators to take account of 180 different countries and different states and levels of growth. Therefore, we felt the need for a country-specific index for Bangladesh. There are many other countries which have gone forward and created such indices for themselves. Over time, this BBX, we hope, will give a snapshot over time of where we are every year, because this is going to be an annual effort on our part. It will give us a picture every year on how we are moving forward and how we are doing in different areas. You will see from the presentation that the picture is very different when we move outside the metropolises of Dhaka and Chittagong. The differences in the geographic locations, the differences of perception within the industries themselves about how they're doing. And furthermore, this being an objective index, which actually interviews the actors, the business people in the various sectors, makes it a very interesting read. This is not an index which is prepared by simply interviewing intermediaries, such as lawyers and chartered accountants, etc. We have gone directly to the business people and we have asked them incisive questions about their positions on 10 different pillars or indicators that we have used to formulate this index. Dr. Masrur Reaz, in his presentation, will go a little bit more into the objectives of the BBX. This index, we believe, will add value vis-a-vis the various global indices which are in place, but it will particularize the perceptions regarding Bangladesh, and we believe that it will help the government policymakers also to get a fairly objective view of what is the position of industry and business enterprises across the country, across sectors, and across the various sizes, because we have looked at SMEs and we have looked at the large industry, both together. So we have been able to synthesize the private sector inputs, and we have also, in designing the indices, we have spoken to relevant participants in the public sector and the government as well. Without more ado, I would like to request Dr. Masrur Reaz to please make the presentation of the index. But before handing the floor over to you, one thing, this is the first effort and this is an ongoing process. So we will hope to be enriching our index by taking note of all your comments, of which as many of the pertinent ones as we can, we shall include before finalizing and sending the final version to all of you next week. Thank you very much. Dr. Reaz, the floor is yours.
Masrur, we can't hear you. Masrur, we are not able to hear you.
No, you're not audible. You're unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Something wrong. Just use your headphones.
No.
Still no audio. Maybe you can log out and log in again, just for a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, clearly.
Yeah.
Are you
So
to share the file?
there seems to be some technical difficulty with the laptop connection, but I'm now using an alternative device to connect. So if I just give me 2 seconds, I'm connected again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, clear.
Okay, so apologies for the technical difficulty. I'm so glad we have technology adoption as one of the pillars for our business climate index in Bangladesh. I wanted to thank Barrister Kabir for her very kind introduction and for the excellent scene-setting remarks, which I think has set the stage very well in terms of why BBX and the process that Metropolitan Chamber and Policy Exchange jointly have embarked upon. So today's special guest, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman MP, Honorable Advisor on Private Industry and Investment to Honorable Prime Minister, special guests, guests of honor, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. Indeed a great honor and privilege and a delight to come to you with this sort of first of its kind product, if I may, intellectual product to Bangladesh, in Bangladesh, introducing the BBX. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I am actually going to take you through some of this, the features, the emerging results, recommendations, and the directions that are emerging from this Bangladesh Business Climate Index, BBX 2021, the first version. Without any further ado, let me introduce BBX by putting together the slides. If you can just allow me to share the slides. Are the slides visible on everybody's screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Excellent.
sir. You could enlarge, I suppose, by a bit.
I have done
Okay,
the enlargement. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Full screen.
So,
Yeah.
It should go on show. It should go
I
on
have
show. PowerPoint show.
Yeah, I've done that on my screen. It's on show. So I don't know if it's appearing.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't moved on the screen, unfortunately.
Yeah, because on my screen I have put the presentation mode, so which is the full screen.
I think we keep going.
Yeah, I think so. Please keep going.
Is it any better?
No.
Just carry on, Masrur.
Okay. All right. So introducing BBX. What is it? Just adding on to Barrister Kabir's introductory points, BBX is a tool or an instrument that presents a pragmatic first-hand synopsis of the quality of Bangladesh's business environment. And in doing so, it identifies the business environment's improvement opportunities, and at the same time, it identifies a prioritized set of reforms for or reform opportunities for the policymakers in understanding where the shoe pinches for the businesses and investors and where the bigger bang for the buck exists in terms of the improvement opportunities. Now, this, as Barrister Kabir said, the BBX is quite unique in a sense. It is benefit, but unlike many other, particularly global indices, BBX reflects private sector's direct inputs, particularly in design as well as in feedback. And in doing so, BBX considers the country context in terms of the business environment focus, in terms of the priority macro and micro areas. What are the contextual factors in the business environment? BBX takes that into consideration. In capturing the business environment or defining the business environment to bring it up through this tool, BBX follows the international best practice, the literature on business environment, and then contextualizes that to the Bangladesh ground reality. And this is meant to be an annual exercise, which once reaches the second year, should be able to give Bangladesh's dynamic picture on how Bangladesh evolves on its business environment, improve opportunities or efforts through a time series comparison. What is the relevance to Bangladesh? Bangladesh, building on its impressive development and economic growth success, it is going to be in a more sophisticated phase of growth trajectory in the coming years in its effort to become a high income country by 2041, post LDC graduation status post 2026. Now, in that particular trajectory, the Bangladesh is going to deal with a sort of more matured, more sophisticated, more competitive business environment, both domestically as well as in the global markets. Now, that would require very timely and right policy decisions, which in turn require regular, structured, systematic data, insights, and evidence and directions in terms of the business environment improvement opportunities. BBX provides the opportunity to adjust, it is flexible, the tool to adjust for country context. In today, infrastructure is very important for the country. If tomorrow within infrastructure, logistics takes actually a greater priority compared to, let's say, electricity and others, we can always actually adjust. That's the beauty of this country-specific index. It goes through time and cost indicators, but it also captures qualitative indicators in terms of businesses' views. For instance, what are the top 3 constraints in a particular area? And most importantly, as this is being sort of developed and executed by 2 local stakeholders, institutions, Policy Exchange and MCCI, the local accountability and the communication with government as well as business can be far more effective than many of the global indices. I think we have highlighted, both Barrister Kabir and myself, that BBX is actually a lot more context sensitive and inclusive. And why do we say that? I mean, if you look at some of the global indices, international ones on Bangladesh, they only measure Bangladesh through the lens of Dhaka and Chittagong, Chattogram. I'm going to interchangeably use Chattogram, Chittagong. The cities, not even the divisions. Of course, they together generate perhaps 60% of Bangladesh's GDP, but that's not they are not the only ones defining Bangladesh's GDP. So this looks at all 8 divisions across Bangladesh. BBX captures the voice of all businesses, including small businesses, who are almost invariably overlooked in global indices. The country-specific priorities, as I mentioned, we could contextualize. So infrastructure, technology adoption, this is the digital Bangladesh's era. Red tapes are often sort of pointed as one of the top constraints for local and foreign investors. And red tapes often arise from regulatory transparency because of lack of regulatory information or lack of access to regulatory information. We have been able to incorporate all of those. Infrastructure, electricity was the focus of many international indices, but Bangladesh needs equally roads connectivity, digital infrastructure, and so on. And BBX gives that opportunity to expand that focus. And it does bring in a sectoral focus, which is based on the sectoral contribution to Bangladesh's GDP, 12 sectors covered, spanning across manufacturing, services, and agriculture. Homegrown country-specific indices are common across developed, emerging, and developing countries. I mean, if we look at our neighborhood, in Asia, China Business Climate Index, the Malaysian Business Condition Index, the Business Climate Index in Vietnam, they have been in place for a long time, providing policymakers and businesses important, directions. Next door, India. India does a measurement of its business environment through the measurement of progress against reforms across all of their states, and does a ranking every year. And that actually, through the reform progress, they bring out the improvements in their business indexes. So moving on to the methodology.
May I interject, please? The slides are not moving on the screen.
I now have methodology. Do you not have that?
No. No, we just have the cover.
Okay.
Can the Secretary General do that?
Yes, somebody from the Secretariat can play the presentation and Dr. Reaz can just make the comments.
That's
Do you
what
have it now? Is it moving?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen sharing. Maybe the MCCI Secretariat can project the slides. Let's move to the methodology side.
I have shared. Can you see it? Dr. Masrur?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. Yes.
I'm moving it.
It needs to move to the methodology slide.
Methodology slide. Yeah, here we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So the methodology, which is extremely important for the overall success of this sort of efforts, and actually provides the backbone to, not in terms of determining the right focus, bringing out the right data, but also credibility. I think we have put sort of in place a considerable amount of efforts to determine this methodology. But let me also highlight something, a caveat, that globally there is no proven single methodology which is actually considered the gold standard. It always depends on the country context, the focus, how do you define the business environment, what priorities within the business environment the country wants to look into. So, and I'm very thankful to MCCI leadership for their very active inputs and feedback in actually developing and refining this methodology. The methodology is divided into two categories: broad index methodology as well as into survey methodology. This is, by the way, is not a survey we are presenting. We are presenting an index, but to develop the index, to put the data into the index construction or methodology, the input was collected through a survey. And the survey methodology, this uses a stratified multi-stage clustering approach, jargon more simply.
I don't think this is the methodology slide. This is relevance of BBX to Bangladesh.
So we have the methodology slide on our screen.
I don't have it. I've got homegrown businesses, climate indices in comparator countries.
Okay, so I think some technical difficulties are
now I've got it. I've now got the methodology slide.
Okay.
So there's no technical, just move back on the slide and then we can see it. Just go back.
No, because
we're on the
I think
slide.
Honorable Advisor, although I have stopped screen sharing, but I think Honorable Advisor was seeing what's on my screen. So
now I'm seeing methodology.
Yeah, so I brought it to methodology. Okay. Okay, so there is a weighted average for divisions, the geographical divisions, the 8 divisions, and the sectors were used, and the weighted average was determined on the basis of the divisions and the sectors' contribution to both GDP as well as employment. The survey took place when we were coming out of COVID. I mean, this was January through almost mid of April. And at that, right at the advent of the second wave. So we reached out to almost 1,000 farms. We received about 451 responses, which qualifies as correct responses. But after applying a few more criteria to fine tune the quality control, we have finally considered 356 high quality responses. Now, moving on to next slide. The methodology is quite detailed and quite technical. So the full detail is provided in the report.
I don't have the next slide in front of me. Now I've got it. Okay, index methodology. Okay.
Yeah. So the full detail of the index methodology is provided, is laid out in detail in the report, which will be available, as Ambassador Kabir said, both online on the websites, as well as in hard copy and electronic copies. And we will be circulating this to all of you next week. So in the index methodology, which is built on 10 pillars, 10 areas of business environment, which we denote as pillars, and there are 35 sub-indicators explaining those pillars. So what we have done, based on the inputs from the survey respondent, we constructed the sub-indicators, took an aggregate for each of the sub-indicators, then we put an aggregate for each of the geographical division, and the third stage, this was all constructed at a pillar aggregate level. So, for example, what is starting a business for as a whole for Bangladesh? What is access to land as a whole for Bangladesh? And then combining all of those, we got a aggregate score for Bangladesh, which is the Bangladesh Business Climate Index score. denoting Bangladesh's business environment in an empirical way. So the 10 pillars we used: starting a business, access to land, availability / access to regulatory information, access to infrastructure. But infrastructure in this case does not only include electricity, it does focus on connectivity infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, as well as digital infrastructure. Labor regulations, dispute resolution, cross-border trade facilitation, paying taxes, technology adoption, and access to finance. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of the respondent profile. We have the disaggregated information or data across farm size, across the divisions. You can see Dhaka and Chittagong has about close to 60%. Then respondent industry type, and all of these, you will see it aligns very well, very neatly to Bangladesh's overall economic structure. Next slide, please. Now, how do we interpret the scores? Just a sort of context. We have categorized the score into 5 categories. So more like a traffic light system. The red, orange, yellow, and green. Now the red is 0 to 20, which denotes a very difficult environment for business, which requires kick-starting the reform needed. 21 to 40 is an orange category. The colors are not coming across exactly how they were put in. Substantial bottlenecks remain for businesses. Significant reform efforts required. For the orange B, let's say 41 to 60, is generally complex business environment, regulatory modernization or simplification required. Then moving on to yellow, 61 to 80, improving business environment, gradual improvements. However, progress, despite the progress, a lot more needs to be done. And then finally, the green category, 81 to 100, which denotes a conducive business environment. Now, where does Bangladesh stand? Sorry. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so here is the perhaps one of the most important findings from this whole exercise. Bangladesh has just made.
Please. We're on back on respondent profile. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
If you can move to the next one.
Good.
No. This one, yes, with the yellow and the sort of pillars, yellow bar and the pillars.
Slide is muddled up.
Yeah.
I think the previous one.
The previous one, I think there's a lag between your moving it and it coming on screen.
Which is the one you want now, Dr. Masrur?
The one before.
Yeah, the one before.
Screen is frozen now for some reason.
Yeah.
Masrur, if you carry on,
Okay.
Yeah. So the BBX, the BBX result for 2021 for Bangladesh is a composite score of 61.01, which just makes into the category, the yellow category, which is improving business environment, progress made. However, a lot more needs to be done. So basically, this is giving some good news that the business environment is moving forward. However, it is also offering a lot of cautions as well as a lot of directions in terms of what requires attention going forward. Basically, the good news for Bangladesh is that there is none in the red category. There is none in the orange A category right after red. However, there are few in the orange B, and there are a few in the yellow category. Now, the yellow, which is improving business environment, starts from 61. And as you can see, it barely makes into that 61.01. So great start, but I think a very long way to go. So what this also says is that while the business environment is moving forward, there is no scope for either a delay or B, complacency. As you know, as it is right on the edge of the orange B section, that any complacency might actually bring down Bangladesh to the orange category. and any delay might actually deprive Bangladesh of the further improvements it can actually very easily score in the coming years. And if you look at the individual pillars or the areas, infrastructure, and then starting of the infrastructure actually denotes the highest score, followed by starting a business or business entry. The worst is cross-border trade facilitation, followed by access to finance. Yes, next slide, please. After the BBX results. Yeah, key highlights of the results. So what is it that the results, key highlights, please put the slides with the heading key highlights of the results. So the key highlights are actually bringing out a number of very interesting directions. First of all, reflection, there is a reflection of the intent within the government as well as broader stakeholder group and the efforts to create a conducive business environment. But it also shows that there needs to be a lot of policy and institutional improvement for border clearance, port congestions, financial intermediation, institutional governance, and so on. As Barrister Kabir also alluded to in her opening remarks, when you take the whole of Bangladesh, the 8 division, the average country experience, it significantly changes for betterment when the focus is expanded beyond and outside Dhaka and Chittagong. What it actually points to is that there is significant regulatory implementation gap issue. Now, Bangladesh being a unitary system of the government, the policies are same, the laws are equally applies for everywhere in the country. However, how they are delivered and implemented, that's where the difference is being felt. What is also very interesting to see and not surprising that areas which have been having major development program undertaken by the government as well as digitalization efforts, they are demonstrating actually greater strengths. Example, infrastructure, where we have seen improvement in energy, but also gradual improvement in connectivity and so on. Digitalization, for example, in the RJSC and other categories. Challenges that vary by sector. We have 12 sectors. There is no common pattern by sector. Now that confirms that every sector have their unique challenges while they are governed by a common set of enabling environment issues. The heterogeneity in the responses, this suggests binding constraints within different pillars, that they are quite different. And then, this pillar specific improvements, order, general business environment, need to be complemented. Everybody put their mics on mute, kindly. So the general business environment improvement efforts need to be complemented by, addressing binding constraints in each of the specific sectors. The results, very interestingly, also do point to a declining investment climate advantage of the primary growth center. Historically, what has been working as the primary growth center of the country, Dhaka, and it is actually pointing to greater potential of other regions. Next slide, please. So there are, of the 10 pillars, the highlights or the sort of summary also in summary, what we are sort of pleased to tell you that there are 4 pillars which are demonstrating progress between somewhat, moderate progress to actually significant progress, somewhat moderate in areas where there are digitization. So progress has started, significant progress, for example, in energy and power access. But there are 6 areas which are into orange B category, So basically closer to yellow, means some more efforts, some more improvements, some quicker efforts can actually help move this to the yellow and eventually to the green category. And these 6 require, immediate addressing in terms of addressing complexity. Next slide, please. So overall score of 61, what does it tell for Bangladesh? I mean, it says that Bangladesh is gradually and steadily making significant progress as it journeys. It had completed its journey towards middle income status, LDC graduation qualification status, and towards high income status. And this led to actually a gradual, slow but gradual modernization of its policy environment as exports expanded, manufacturing and services took strong footing, as well as the agri supply chain around the country developed as a robust one, which we also saw during our COVID dark days. Secondly, Bangladesh is very well known around the world for its macro successes and the macro stability. The macro successes are actually now percolating down to slowly again, but gradually into micro achievements. For example, Bangladesh, the results demonstrate that Bangladesh has been able to put together, gradually developing meaningful administrative and production support system in several areas. Thirdly, the results also show that there is an unfinished agenda. While, as I say, 4 are making some progress, but there are 6 which requires attention. So, attention or the unfinished agenda towards making Bangladesh's environment, even stronger or more conducive, it requires improvement in trade facilitation, access to finance, facilitation of technology adoption, and improvement in several other areas. And finally, the score also says, 61, some may interpret it as high, some may interpret it as only 60%, right? So, but what it tells us is that not only, there is of course, there are great achievements, which has actually brought it to the yellow category. However, there are unfinished agenda, which also need to be looked at on a continual basis. There is, again, I'm highlighting, there is no sort of scope for slowdown or complacency. Just because we have done better in certain areas, it doesn't mean then do not need further improvements in the coming days, months, and years. Next slide, please. I'll move very fast through the next slides. If you look at the 10 pillars, each of them are saying a different story. If you look at the access to land, for example, very interestingly, RMG, the ready-made garment sector, the principal export sector of the country, they say they find it most difficult to obtain access land. Now, when we look more, delve deeper into this, we find out that the location is making this response in that particular way. Most of the RMG enterprises are in and around Dhaka and Chittagong, where the urbanization has not been as if managed as it could have been, and as a result, access, price, and transfer of lands are quite complex, and the prices are quite high. And as a result, the RMG units denote that they actually find it most difficult. Trade regulations or the cross-border trading, export-oriented sectors such as apparel, such as textile, and even transport and storage sectors, they find it burdensome because of over paperwork, overly over requirements of paperwork, administrative burdens, and procedures. When it comes to technology adoption, the wholesale and retail sector finds it most problematic or struggling. Why? Perhaps because the sales methods around the world, as well as in Bangladesh, are going through rapid digitization, and the sector that perhaps feels one of the greatest pressure to adopt technology and perhaps cannot do it as fast as they would love to is actually wholesale and trade. Next slide, please. Starting a business. Now let's look a little deeper into each of the pillar. Starting a business, but I'll be very fast in the interest of time. Dhaka Chittagong doesn't come at the top. This is setting up or starting a business. They are number 3 and 4. Khulna Rajshahi comes on number 1 and 2. What is easiest in this pillar according to the index? Incorporation. It demonstrates that the digitalization effort at RGSC has worked well. However, the businesses say that obtaining sectoral licenses or even trade licenses, remember we have lots of small business as our respondents, they say are still the most difficult of the regulatory procedures. And on an average, the respondents have to stop by at 5 different offices in order to complete their starting a business. Now that denotes to a red tape issue. Next slide, please. Access to land. I just explained the RMG one, but again, Dhaka Chittagong, number 3 and 4. Respondents say among the problems they face within this land issue, mutation-related delays are the most, or the complexity are the most burdensome. And there needs to be often informal payments that has to be actually incorporated in order to get the things done. Next slide, please. availability of regulatory information or access to regulatory information and clarity. Basically, this leads to regulatory transparency, regulatory clarity. And a lot of the red tapes we actually come across or we hear of, it's related to this, because regulatory transparency or regulatory clarity determine how easy it is to comply with regulation, get approvals, understand decisions behind approvals or rejections. Now, good news is most respondents here say that they are generally aware of the numerous applicable registrations and for licenses and renewals. But when it comes to the modern day way of understanding and accessing information, which is online, access to what is required for regulatory compliance, during setting up operations or even exit, that's why they find it really difficult. And finally, they very, very important that majority of the respondents or the index score also confirm that changes in the laws and regulations, very rarely they get prior information, and as a result, neither can they share their views adequately, nor can they plan their businesses with consistency in many cases. Next slide, please. Access to infrastructure. And as I said, our focus, one of the country contextualization was that we expanded the infrastructure focus from just electricity, as it is used by many international indices, to include road connectivity or connectivity infrastructure. The infrastructure part of logistics, not the whole logistics part of that goes into the trade, and digital infrastructure, which is increasingly becoming a part and parcel of doing business, right? And this pillar scores the highest of the 10 pillars. Why? It rides on the quadrupling of the electricity supply and the ease in electricity supply, and as well as the energy supply to the businesses in the country. But it's not only electricity. If you look at the road connectivity, particularly connecting hinterlands, rural roads, which actually help SMEs a lot, particularly in agri supply chain, fast-moving consumer goods supply chain, the road connectivity also scored well in Bangladesh within the infrastructure. And finally, the digital infrastructure, the mobile penetration is almost 117% of this country. 103 million internet access, in Bangladesh. So that actually led to a very good assessment of the mobile digital infrastructure. But what is also important to understand is that when things improve, a lot of the governance, micro governance scenarios improve. So here in infrastructure, 65%, when we looked at the survey, 65% say they really do not need to make any informal payments any longer in getting the electricity related issues resolved. Next slide, please. Labor regulations. Complying with labor returns or completing labor returns have turned out to be something very easy, but where the shoe pinches for businesses, the policy regulations, regulatory compliance for skilling, for getting the right technology and other means to get at the doorstep to get the workers skilled, and availability of skilled workers turned out to be the biggest thorn in their way. And also compensations, the mandatory compensation in certain situations like severance, layoffs, I think they turn out to be both the process and the rate that turned out to be a big problem. Next slide, please. Dispute resolution. As I said, some of the results somewhat challenges traditional thoughts. So index is showing that majority still find the court system, or actually let me rephrase, majority still has some level of faith in the court system to resolve their dispute. But when compared to adopting alternate dispute resolution system. So those are the only two available means here, right? So it basically what it is denoting to that the alternate dispute resolution system, which is improving, however, remains in a far rudimentary stage, and in terms of ownership, awareness, and confidence has not gone up to that level. So things like Arbitration Act, mediation rules under the civil procedure codes, and several other areas really need to be strengthened. But the index also shows that the responses that fed into the index also shows that the majority feel there has not been any improvement in the timeline that is required through the court system in order to resolve a dispute. And when it comes to land and property, including commercial related matters, those are the ones which actually drag for the longest time. Next slide, please. Paying taxes, we have mixed results. Again, some traditional thoughts are challenged, but some very interesting new understanding are coming up. So, sorry, it's cross-border trade facilitation, right? Did we miss paying tax, or that's perhaps after that? No, I think, okay, let's stick to cross-border trade. So this is the lowest scoring area, cross-border trade facilitation. Why? There are many reasons. Port congestions, border clearance, coordination and number and the quality of coordination among government agencies that are involved. 39, up to 39 government agencies. We all think it's customs and port, but actually up to 39 government agencies are involved depending on what product you are trying to get cleared. Customs clearance among the clearances have actually come up as the most difficult one. However, in terms of the distribution of across the geography, Chittagong is faring well. This is probably because the proximity to the main sort of trade gateway, Chittagong, but also good trade transportation system within Chittagong and broader Chittagong area. Next slide, please. So paying taxes is where some of the traditional sort of understanding do get challenged. But when you look at the geographical distribution, all gets explained very well. So in the paying taxes, what we see is that, there is high rate of corporate tax being a problem. There are also issues in terms of how to administer the compliances, in terms of how many times you file VAT and how many times you file income tax and how that can be rationalized. Now, this particular, I just want to take one extra minute on this slide. This particular slide or actually pillar area scores well. Now that is against, or that kind of overrules some of our concern we all have been having, that tax is a big constraint, or how the tax is administered is a big constraint for businesses. It is indeed the case if you look at Chittagong and Dhaka, where they stand. Chittagong and Dhaka are the lowest among the 8 divisions. So this is a classic example of what Barrister Kabir and I mentioned earlier, that when you start focusing beyond Dhaka, focusing on businesses beyond Dhaka and Chattogram, things start changing, in many cases positively. Why? So one explanation is that, the predatory and discretionary behavior of many of the tax officials, they are largely centered around large and upper end of the medium businesses. Now those are concentrated in Dhaka and Chittagong mostly. And as you see, the scores that come for Dhaka and Chattogram are in the lowest of the categories. Next slide, please. Technology adoption, very important for Bangladesh. Digital Bangladesh, Bangladesh's export competitiveness, post-COVID recovery, where digital is going to play a more important role in the production system. Here, the majority of the respondents mentioned that, really encouraging. They invested in some form of new technology. It could be as simple as Microsoft Excel, just to keep accounts, something like that, all the way to automations and use of AI and other 4IR aspects. However, majority also say that they find it significant bottleneck in terms of technology adoption, technology transfer, or even accessing technology from cross-border marketplaces where the technology largely exists, right? And the final pillar, access to finance, which is the second worst from the bottom after trade facilitation. There are, again, in Dhaka and Chittagong, there are major complexities, but we have figured out that, from the results, that Dhaka, Chittagong, the businesses also compete. The competition is quite high against limited number of sort of fund, whereas the competition goes down in terms of the size of fund and the number of people who are looking for it. When you go outside Dhaka, as a result, the experience improves. But there is significant complexities with the collateral type, collateral requirements, and the collateral processing. Again, around Dhaka and Chittagong, this is particularly hard because of not so great urbanization. It is hard to mobilize real property as collateral in these areas. Next slide, please. I'm almost at the end because I will just summarize. In the index, we try to capture how different pillars fare or perform in different sectors. So what is, for example, take starting a business, where is it most conducive? Wholesale and retail trade. Where is it most difficult? Food and beverage, because there are BSTI regulations, there are food safety regulations. Whether they're being implemented rightly, whether they're the right kind of regulation, determine why this is being most difficult. So you will find it in the report. Next slide, please. We also have, this is from the qualitative part of the index, where for most of the pillars we have tried to capture what are the top 3 constraints, policy and regulatory and institutional, that actually pinch the shoes for the businesses in these areas. Next slide, please. And then we have disaggregated the in results again by sector. What are the top 3 pillar areas? So going beyond one area, what are the 3 areas where things are good, which can be further strengthened, but what are the bottom 3 pillar areas where things are not so great and requires significant boost? Next slide, please. Actually, carry on. Next slide. So final slide, the index scores, they have significant implications for Dhaka and Chattogram as primary growth centers. If you look at the results on the right-hand side of the table, Dhaka Chattogram, it tops all the division, being the best performer in 4 out of the 10 pillar areas. But when it comes to Dhaka, not a topper in any of the indicators. Now, it's in the orange category in 6 out of 10 indicator areas. So as I said at the beginning, it denotes waning or declining investment climate advantage of Dhaka. It's still probably ahead of others in many areas, but whether this can be sustained, these results question that. This could be a result of the centralization and over-centralization of policy and regulatory services, related to the decision-making powers in Dhaka. Ultimately, this results in discretionary behavior, but also what we call regulatory slack, intent for further improvement. So these findings point to an urgent need and emerging opportunity to diversify growth center beyond Dhaka. Particularly, it shows that we can take greater advantage of Chattogram as and its business environment to make it a true commercial and industrial and economic hub. And the recent developments, excellent developments such as Mirsharai Special Economic Zone, the Kornofuli River Tunnel, the Bay Container Terminal, the proposed Bay Container Terminal, Energy Hub in Matabari, they all actually add up to increase the investors' perception about Chattogram being the. So we have several slides of recommendation, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip that. And let me thank everybody for your patience, and let me hand it over to today's chair, Barrister Kabir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reaz, for your presentation and keeping it as concise as possible for quite the amount of detailed work that has gone into it. I think our audience will have seen that there are some counterintuitive findings here. For example, the last statement made by Dr. Reaz about Chittagong faring better than Dhaka. And also we have seen that Khulna and Barisal actually fare well in certain aspects. So that, for example, upon the completion of Padda Bridge, possibly a lot of investment can move in that direction. So these are the sort of things countrywide, location-specific issues which have also come up. Without further ado, I'm going to move on to our guests and our speakers. Before going on to our designated speakers today, I've received a request from our president of FBCCI, Mr. Mohammad Jashim Uddin, to be invited to speak first and then perhaps take his leave, as he has another engagement being out of the country. Mr. Jashim Uddin, please. President of FBCCI, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nihad. Honorable Chief Guest, today's program.
Can someone stop this?
It's okay?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Chief Guest of today's program, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman, MP, Honorable Private Industry, Honorable MP, Honorable Private and Investment Advisors to the Honorable Prime Minister, Session Chair, Ms. Barrister Nihad Kabir, President MCCI, Mr. Muhammad Sirazul Islam, Executive Director, Executive Chairman, BIDA. Guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Ito Naoki, Ambassador, the Embassy of Japan, Bangladesh. Keynote presenter, Mr. Dr. Masrur Reaz, Chairman, CEO, Policy Exchange, Bangladesh. Distinguished panelist, Rupali Haque Chowdhury, President, Foreign Investment Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Syed Nasim Manzur, former President MCCI, and Rizwan Rahman, President DCCI. Abul Kasem Khan, Chairperson, BILD. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon to all. It gives me great pleasure and honor to be here today at the launching event Bangladesh Business Climate Index report. I think MCCI and PEB for coming up the report, inviting me here. We all know that in a country, a favorable business climate helps business to flourish. It also facilitates trade, thereby existing its future economic development. If we look at Bangladesh, the country has progressed vastly since its independence. Poverty has come down 20.5% in 2019. Most of importantly, inequality has also been reduced. Present microeconomic management, higher private sector engagement in policy dialogues, trade integration, economic liberalization, and large inflows of remittance have been the fundamental cause and the resilience and growth in Bangladesh. Such progression does not, however, justify complacency. There are many areas where we can improve significantly. In Bangladesh, every year more than 2 million people are entering into the job market. They need employment. They need to be ensured a minimum standard of the living. We must overcome the jobless growth phase and ensure our people have proper job. That requires more industrialization, investment, and business. A sound business climate would be a bedrock for Bangladesh trade and commerce. Distinguished guests, for long we have been using the World Bank doing business report in checking our business climate. However, just a few weeks back, the report was discontinued. Planning for the future becomes very hard when there is no standard against which we can measure our business performance. The vacuum needs to fill as soon as possible. We are thankful to MCCI and PEB for their step into the right moment fill up this space. This report, Bangladesh Business Climate Index, BBX, introduced a new innovative business environment index for Bangladesh. I hope this will be unique in providing private investors, the government agencies with timely and detailed data on regulatory and other barriers to doing business. From the report, we informed that BBX has both sector geography specific tailored for Bangladeshi related, and based on interview with the leading entrepreneurs, the BBX identified 10 major areas as key investor interest. Those are business entry, access to land, access to regulatory information, access to infrastructure, labor regulations, dispute resolutions, cross-border trade facilitation, tax resolutions, technology adoption, and access to finance. I think it will be very useful for business. I hope the actions suggested in this report would be implemented for further development of our business and environment. Once again, I like to thank MCCI and PEB for initiating this report. May Bangladesh use all the resources to improve the business climate and reach new levels of development for attaining SDG and achieving Vision 2041 to be developed country. Thank you all. Thank you for patient hearing.
Thank you very much, esteemed President, FBCCI. Thank you very much for joining our program, even while you're not in the country. Let me move on to our designated speakers. I would like to invite Mr. Rizwan Rahman, President of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to kindly give his comments on the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chief Guest, Honorable Special Guest, FBCCI President, BIDA Chair, and the Guest of Honor, Ambassador Naoki. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm actually very delighted to be at the launching event of the BBX, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank MCCI and Policy Exchange Bangladesh for this joint and, of course, very innovative initiative to identify and address the challenges of doing business environment in Bangladesh. And of course, it's very encouraging to see that the index has been developed especially for Bangladesh to assess the overall business climate and the ecosystem, as well as the strengths and weaknesses that we have seen in the 10 important areas. And special thanks to Dr. Reaz for the in-depth presentation. And I have seen a lot of indicators have been brought up, and needless to mention that these type of indexes of business development tool will actually help us navigate the private sector businesses and economy into the right direction. And as we know that many global indicators, including the World Bank Doing Business Index, are prevalent to assess the business environment of different countries. But we have doubts regarding the effects and impacts of EODB globally. So therefore, I think that, and I hope that the BBX has been designed to assess with respect to the Bangladeshi perspective, addressing the doubts and limitations of any other indexes that have been used, whether it is the EODB or the GCI, the Global Competitiveness Index. And this can actually better present our local economic climate. And since the BBX is a homegrown instrument, it can definitely outperform and, of course, overcome all limitations of other indexes and direct, relevant, and appropriate reforms for overall business environment can be adopted. And in the presentation, I've also noticed that some challenges of customs clearance, dispute resolution, and of course, the ease of submission of returns with the NBR, which need to be vehemently addressed. In various events, I have seen today's chief guest lash out on the lack of reforms for the alternative dispute resolution, which is extremely important for the EODB ranking of any country. And I think that the commercial disputes need to be gone through arbitration model, as opposed to going to the courts and taking years to be settled. And also another thing I've seen that the access to finance, which has been addressed here, we need to engage the Bangladesh Bank to accept the cash flow financing modality, as opposed to the Stone Age version of collateral-based financing. But I'm also happy to see that all the districts have been included in the findings, but we must also emphasize more and more inclusion of other districts beyond Dhaka and Chattogram. And I'm confident that in the next years, when this index goes on for every year, there will be more inclusion of these districts. And I think the policy-related problems can be addressed, and this can also show a pathway to develop strategies for newer integration with policy. So we need to work and promote this BBX to globalize it, its acceptance, give its global recognition. And if it sounds effective locally, it may be replicated with the rest of the world. So with all these few words, I think for our progressive business environment, on behalf of all the members of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I sincerely appreciate your efforts and wish you all success in this indexing. Thank you for giving me the floor, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much, President DCCI, for your comments. Let me just make something clear. With this index, we started work on it much before the UODB was discontinued. But certainly, and the Honorable Chief Guest will remember, we've worked under his guidance in analyzing the findings of the UODB, and that there are the interpretation of the facts in the UODB, and we came to very different conclusions, because to say many of these countries were better places for doing business than Bangladesh based on that index was just not factually true as far as we are concerned.
Agree.
Let me move on to our next designated speaker, if I may, Chairperson of BUILD, Mr. Abul Kasem Khan.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Today's chief guest, Mr. Salman Rahman, Honb'le Adviser. His Excellency Honorable Ambassador of Japan, Honorable Chairman of BIDA, business leaders, our FBCCI President, panel members, friends from the print and electronic media. Assalamu alaikum. First, I would like to congratulate MCCI and Policy Exchange for this innovative and very creative index that you've created. It's a very timely initiative. And this index, as the President of Dhaka Chamber rightly pointed out, will identify the performance of Bangladesh in the 10 pillars that has been mentioned. It covers many areas. I think there are a lot of information. These kind of homegrown indexes are being done in various countries, as mentioned in the presentation. China, Vietnam, Malaysia, they have similar indexes. So this is something not new for the world, but for Bangladesh is something very new. So again, congratulations to MCCI. I would just go into the presentation, just take some time on the survey. It covers all the regions of Bangladesh, which is very good. Apart from Dhaka, Chittagong, the coverage is well defined and it's quite balanced. If you look at the slide 8, I think it would be better if the breakdown, region-wise sectoral breakdown, if that was presented, or maybe the data is available, maybe the slide could be included so that it gives a different perspective to see which sectors are represented in the various regions. If I go into the starting of business, slide 15, 77% of businesses are saying that they have to go to 5 different offices to obtain various approvals. I think we need to see if these offices are common for the sectors, or there are different offices that need to be visited for getting the approval. So because we have the OSS coming on board, so there has to be a survey also to find out how many people or how many businesses are taking their services from OSS vis-a-vis going the traditional way. So that also will give you a different perspective as how successful the OSS is given the situation. It is interesting to see, and obviously slide 24, access to finance, having the lowest score. And I definitely agree with the President of Dhaka Chamber that the collateral-based financing is the bottleneck to this access to finance problem. And most of the small and medium-sized companies don't have the adequate collateral to get the loan. So this is an area where we need to put our focus and try to change the laws. On the land access, I think it's quite interesting to see. There are 2 elements which the policy planners need to actually concentrate. One is land availability, and secondly is the registration process. So I think the survey should indicate the difference between the two, and that would give a real picture as to where the problem lies. Paying taxes, here I think because Dhaka Chittagong contribute, I think most of the 80% of the taxes are coming from Dhaka Chittagong. So the weighted average needs to be used. I think that calculation, I think, I don't know how Dr. Masrur can explain, because I don't agree with the paying taxes scoring is third best of the 10 pillars. On the recommendation side, I fully agree with the recommendation, particularly on the recommendation of developing a national logistic policy. I think we, as a country, we pay about 20% cost, our overall cost, whereas other countries are paying 10% on the logistics. So this is an area where I think it's a good recommendation. I would not take much time. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and I hope this index is a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, President Bill. Let me say that we are also considering from next year coming up with a logistics index, actually, as well as an SME policy index. So, because we think both logistics and access to finance are very important components of the entire business environment here. Regarding the payment of taxes, I suppose people have just got used to being taken around the mill to pay it. So that's how it's come up at that level. These are perceptions of the taxpayers themselves, but we will look into your comments. I would like to request Ms. Rupali Chowdhury, the President of the Foreign Investors Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for her comments, please.
Good afternoon. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman, and a special guest and also guest of honor. It's interesting that, I must thank MCCI for this timely research with PAB. We have been talking about bits and pieces in different forums. I mean, now actually most of the informations are collated, and I am a slow learner because I have just gone through the presentation. I'm still to absorb all the things that have been told. What I actually believe that basically some of the scores, I mean, we actually knew, isn't it? So, but this has been basically the responded, and it becomes because it is survey driven and it is our own people actually replying. It's not really any perception, but it's actual reality they are portraying. And since it is a database research, I believe that there is a question of trust and believability of the report. And that is going to be a very good point with the actual regulatory body and or many ministries that we are working with. A business is actually governed by 19 law. So, it's only not only one ministry you're working, then that situation is going to be better. We're continuously talking about NBR. No, it's everybody. It's the law ministry, it's environment, it's everything. And when we are seeing, we are working with BIDA, we actually understand what are the real problems that we are facing. But interestingly, that what we say that, can we really say this us and they? I mean, we are as a business people, we are saying or talking about the climate, and we are talking about that climate can be changed by the regulatory body. But it's not really us and they. We are in this together. So when we see that sub-sectors, sub-indicators in each pillar, we'll see that small tweaking, small policy change, small SOP is going to change the I think the rating and the problem. So and also we all know the devil lies in the details. So I would really appreciate if Masrur actually and also the team, since they have started, and there will be a very good journey to go and see that what are those pain points. If we can only address those pain points and actually work with the regulatory body and show them that we can work together for the betterment, because our chief guest, in many occasions he told me, he actually accused me that you chamber people, you come only for reduction of the revenues and all that. So I think MCCI and also FICCI in future, we are going to also show where, in our case, where the FDI can come, which are the area Bangladesh can work together with the regulatory body. So we are now in the dialogue that how we can actually improve investment climate, doing business in Bangladesh for better Bangladesh. And SME access to finance, then we face this problem because of the lack of data during COVID period. When for SME, the money was allocated, we saw that only 30% of the SME, they were actually they have access to bank, and also they're working with the bank. Now, if government want to disburse the money, now how to get the data of those SMEs who are actually regularly paying VAT and taxes and use that data and give them the money? But we could not do that. How to integrate and how to get this data and how to actually, other than the banking collateral based, different kind of banking systems from the central bank. So I think these are all we can talk together, and we meet the basic problem. Actually, basically, everybody will say that the elephant in the room is going to be regulated. I don't believe that. They are also like us. They have to work with the multidisciplinary industry and also ministry and also law. So ultimately, how this complex issues is going to be resolved. So our honorable advisor is here, and he himself is a business person, and he understands the problem thoroughly. In most cases, actually more than us also. So if actually we all work together, and I really appreciate MCCI PAB again, and FICCI also is going to come up with one such research paper where FDI can come, and that's going to happen in November. So, Mr. Honorable Chief Guest, that Chamber are really working for the better business environment and also investment. And I'm really thankful that I have been actually given this opportunity to talk on behalf of all the business person. We are hopeful. We know that Bangladesh is going to go forward, but I'm going to repeat what you said, Mr. Chief Guest, that what has brought us here is not going to take us further in future also. So we have to do something different, and time is now. So we should not lose out on time. And I'm really grateful to all of you, because every department is trying to do a lot of road shows around the world. But if we do not keep our house in order and then actually ask people to come, then it's going to give different kind of message. So, and this is a timely thing that we need to actually put things in order so that we can grow and investment can also come from home and also abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed to President FICCI. We hope particularly that as this index gets publicized and matures and grows over the years, it will become the benchmark for foreign investors in Bangladesh, as well as our local investors. Thank you very much. I would like to go to Mr. Syed Nasim Manzur, distinguished entrepreneur and former president of MCCI, for his comments.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Madam Chair, Honorable Chief Guest, Special Guests, Guests of Honor, Excellencies, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, members of MCCI and members of the media. I'd like to congratulate Policy Exchange and MCCI for what we believe is the first of many such reports. And this BBX, as we would like to call it, should be a work in progress as we go forward. As our Madam President has said, this is the first attempt. By no means perfect, but we believe it's a step in the right direction. We're particularly pleased and proud that it is a homegrown initiative, and it reflects the ground realities of Bangladesh rather than being forced to cater to 142 other countries and fit that same mold. I believe there are 7 specific takeaways from the presentation made by Dr. Reaz. First being that the importance of being sector and geographic specific. We have not seen this in the past. We've seen, again, broad brush attempts to look at everything together. The fact that we can actually do comparisons by sector and by geography makes this unique. Second, the aggregate composite score of 61.01. And I'll quote from the report: improving, progress made, but significant efforts required. Unfinished policy agenda, especially in terms of improving trade facilitation. The emphasis repeatedly on trade facilitation as an area that we can do better. Regulatory and institutional improvement will need to be continually made. Echoing what the FICCI chairman had to say, we need regulatory and institutional improvements, and it should not be seen as attacks. We need to talk to each other, and we need to be able to have constructive and open criticism about where industry and regulators can come forward and make business more easy for everybody. Third takeaway, which is of course very interesting, where the better business climate outside Dhaka and Chittagong. We've seen how Khulna and Rajshahi rank higher. Yet we all know the over-concentration in Dhaka and Chittagong. We have seen how multinationals, including some of our distinguished panelists, have moved from Chittagong back into Dhaka. So not only is the concentration in Dhaka and Chittagong, there is reconcentration in Dhaka. So this is counterintuitive, as was pointed out by our chair. Why is business still not moving out, despite knowing supposedly business is easier to do beyond Dhaka and Chittagong? This needs to be addressed. Point number 4, I think the 10 pillars tell a different story. The granular analysis, the constraints per region, per industry. This is very important for policymakers to come up with targeted policy reform. This is something that we see, that the policy makers want to have a one-size-fits-all solution for all sectors. Different sectors have different needs and different issues that they're grappling with. The fact that RMG continues to highlight land as their major problem means that maybe there is, the so-called garment village that we've talked about is something that's to be taken seriously. So you cannot treat the needs of the pharmaceutical industry and the garment industry. And again, I'm not even sure that garments believes that land is the #1 problem. We need to talk to them, find out a little bit more. Number 5, regulatory burdens are different for different sectors. And I think this is very important. As was pointed out by the chair of BILD, 5 different offices. All of these kind of discretionary areas allow informality in the economy, which is not good for revenue collection, which is not good for policy reform. Point number 6, which I think is critical, and I'll quote again: trade is the worst well-performing pillar in Bangladesh, according to the BCI. Customs clearance requires coordination of up to 39 agencies, depending on the product. We've seen recently the visit by our chief advisor to the airport and the appalling conditions there for outbound freight. The comparative high logistics costs in Bangladesh, making exports less competitive and imports very expensive. Logistics and trade facilitation is a key problem highlighted by everybody, and we need to concentrate and focus on this. And last but not least, over-centralization of policy and regulatory services related to decision-making power in Dhaka over the last few decades have resulted in discretionary and predatory behavior on the part of some regulators, which particularly stifles the SME sector, but affects all businesses. This is a direct quotation, page 60 of the report, which we will share with you, and this needs to be addressed. We need to diversify growth beyond Dhaka. We also need to find out what are the other soft reasons why growth doesn't happen outside Dhaka. And I would like to stress 2 areas. When we try to build factories or relocate production or even major distribution centers outside Dhaka, the absence of schools, hospitals, and good quality of life outside Dhaka and Chittagong is a major problem. So we can have the best tax breaks, we can have tax holidays, we can have low-cost labor and low-cost electricity, but the need to move beyond Dhaka and Chittagong needs to be facilitated with building ecosystems where people can live outside Dhaka. We have seen that even trying to move people to Kaliakor, which is only 45 kilometers from here, is almost impossible because they don't have the schools there for their children or the hospitals and the medical center. This is something that I hope we will take into account. Last but not least, the table 19 at the end, which is the specific policy recommendations by sectors. We hope that you look at it by indicator, and we will come to a consensus that this BBX is a step in the right direction. We are proud that it is Bangladesh grown and Bangladesh born, and we believe it will lead us forward. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Syed Nasim Manzur. This brings us to the end of our designated speakers. who have all made very important points, and we will be looking into those. Before moving on to our guest of honor and special guest and a chief guest, I would like to take this opportunity to ask one or two of our very eminent guests present here today to see if they would like to speak. I think we have Excellency, the Ambassador of Malaysia here.
The Japanese ambassador would like to speak.
The Japanese ambassador is our guest of honor, and he will be speaking after the interventions from the. No, I don't see that the ambassador is there. Is Mr. Wahid Sharif there, President of Dhaka?
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to make some comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mailapa. Thank you very much for inviting me, and this is a fantastic report. And for that, Dr. Masrur Reaz, thank you very much for presenting. So I have one comment. Definitely, a lot of points came up. Though I'm from the ITS industry, so I would like to see some reflection of the digital sectors or ITS sectors on this report, or maybe another report can be done for the ITS industry, where we are, how our problems, where we are lacking, and where it needs to be looked at from the digital perspective. I think many of the problems that, or the challenges that we saw in the presentations are pretty similar to as an industry, but though it's ITS is a little bit unique, we may have some different area to cover. So maybe in the future, maybe we can do another industry index for the digital industry. So that will be my only comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take note of that. We have one of the pillars here, but perhaps more emphasis can be paid on that. We have several of our embassies online. Let me see if I can.
Madam Chair, it's seen Bangladesh ambassador to Madrid. It's seen on the box, but I don't know exactly. Just to draw your attention. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do we have an honorable ambassador here online? Or we have anybody from our embassy in Madrid online?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you, do you want to hear from me? Can you please repeat the question, please?
No. Do you have any comments to make on the presentation?
No, very much. I'm happy. I'm happy to be with you today. I am benefited.
Okay, good.
No comment, please. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I see Mr. Salman Isfahani is online. Mr. Isfahani? Okay, we've lost him.
Madam Chair, we have commercial councillor, Dr. Zulia from Tehran, if you would like to offer her.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Would the commercial councillor like to speak, please?
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. First of all, I want to extend my thanks to the presenter for his excellent presentation. And it is a very fruitful and very informative research-based result, I think. And I have one observation like this. We saw that there are 10 pillars indicated here in this report, and in the report we see that each pillar has its own area of comfort. That is, if we consider that access to infrastructure, the area that Rajshahi, Khulna, it is very high potential area there. And if we Consider that technology adoption, that is Chittagong, Khulna, it is in a very good position. So it is my observation that if we want to have a good destination as Bangladesh as a very good destination of investment or startup businesses, then we should have in the area which is very all the facilities is in one under one umbrella, you know. And for that, I think for mutation, for the land problem, land registration problem, it should be disseminated with the government organizations, government departments like land ministry. If it is the judicial dispute related, then it should be disseminated with the respective organizations or government organization. It may be the other organization, and so that if it is disseminated with all others, and we if we can just keep them under one umbrella, it will be very fruitful for us, for Bangladesh business. So it is from my part, and thank you very much again to connect us in this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Madam, we have Commercial Councillor from Brussels. If you would like to kindly request him.
Certainly. Sorry, I'm not being able to see from here. Thank you. If the Commercial Council in Brussels would kindly like to speak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Basically, I don't have any particular comment or observation. What I would say, this is basically, in my understanding, the first ever of its kind in Bangladesh, and that will provide a valuable input in terms of maneuvering our business here in Brussels as well. Thank you very much for giving this kind of input, and I understand that this will help us to. And just a simple comment in this: for a long time, we were just depending on the global indexes. We are trying to understand the business atmosphere in Bangladesh, and for example, this ease of doing business index. I think this is a one more addition in this series, and I would say that will help us in future. I hope that will be a regular annual effort, and wish you all the best. And thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thanks again.
Thank you. I hope that all our embassies will be able to use this index in their conversations with potential foreign investors. I believe our ambassador to Bahrain is online, Dr. Masrur Islam. Is His Excellency online?
Sorry, it was muted. Thank you, Barrister Nihad Kabir, MCCI President, and all distinguished participants, and particularly our Honb'le Adviser, and BIDA Chairman is here also. Actually, every day, all our missions, we face this critical aspect of what is the business climate in Bangladesh. And certainly this initiative of MCCI and policy exchange for releasing BBX will help a lot. And we need to disseminate this in to businesses around the world. And from Bahrain, actually, it is a GCC member, though it is a small country, but there is many business potential for our Bangladeshi businesses. They can do export, and also they can have joint venture here, and also Bahraini and Saudi and other Gulf investors, they can move into Bangladesh with Bangladeshi partners. So this report and BBX really will be very helpful for this. And I got their presentation already through this platform, and I'm looking forward to the whole report. As you said, Madam Chair, that it will be given to us within next 1 or 2 weeks' time, and I look forward to receiving that. And certainly we'll be talking to each of every business people here present. I know many of you, and certainly I'm happy to extend our full support from the Embassy of Bangladesh here in Bahrain. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining the program, Excellency. I would now like to, in the interest of time, because we want to wrap up by around 5 o'clock, I would like to move on to our guest of honor, His Excellency Ambassador Naoki of Japan. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Nihad. So thank you very much for having me here. So our honorable advisor to Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Salman Rahman MP, and colleagues from MCCI, PEB, and other important trade economic related organizations, distinguished panelists, participants, and colleagues from Bangladesh Diplomatic Services, Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon. So it's a great pleasure and honor for me to attend this and share my views on the business environment of Bangladesh, as well as on this newly launched index jointly published by MCCI and PEB. First of all, I would like to congratulate and welcome the initiatives by MCCI and PEB for launching this wonderful and insightful and comprehensive business indexes of Bangladesh. As Rizwan Rahman said, I think the significance of this index is the fact that this includes Bangladeshi perspectives, and this is homegrown instrument. So in parallel to EODB ranking, I'm sure that this index will be utilized for the improvement of Bangladesh business environment later stage. So in that sense, I do really look forward to this development of this index starting from this year and next year onwards. Needless to say, track record of Bangladesh economic development is wonderful. And in spite of corona pandemic, Bangladesh economy has been showing positive growth. And even yesterday or today, the World Bank revised up its forecast of this fiscal year as the growth of this country to 6.4%. And no doubt, Bangladesh will record the fastest growth in this decade during 2020s in Asia. And every day, I'm enjoying living in this most vibrant and most energetic capital in the world. Japan has been cooperating on this Big B initiative, which was launched by the two prime ministers back in 2014. And we intended to build industrial corridor between Dhaka, Chattogram, and Cox's Bazar. And intention is to enhance connectivity inside the country and with neighboring countries. So as you know, JICA has been doing this Dhaka metro project, airport extension project, as well as Matabali deep sea port project. Those are, I would say, flagship projects of JICA in relation to building Big B initiative. Yes, infrastructure of Bangladesh will change in 5 years' time. So the face of the nation will be transformed. Infrastructure used to be a bottleneck of the economy of Bangladesh, but I would say infrastructure would be the strong point of Bangladesh economy in 5 years' time and beyond. I think today's index already reflected that point, and infrastructure had the highest score among 10 pillars here. What I would like to emphasize here is that Bangladesh is economy is emerging, and Bangladesh is establishing itself as the new investment frontier of Asia, making the most of its strategic location. And there'll be better chance after the corona pandemic. Everybody needs to establish a sustainable and reliable supply system through diversifying production bases, particularly in Asia. There, I can see better and expanded opportunities for Bangladesh. So Bangladesh will be a destination of investment, China +1 investment destination. So Bangladesh will be this +1. So you might say that finally a relocation from China to Bangladesh would be possible. And what I would like to say here is the Japanese companies are prepared to expand their business operations here in Bangladesh and contribute to the further development of Bangladesh economy as soon as the corona pandemic subsides. So certainly in everybody's mind, there is the fact that after the LDC graduation, the competitive environment will be harsher, and you need to make further efforts to realize Vision 2041. So to that end, yes, you have to improve continuously and constantly investment climate. You need to do regulatory reform. You have to have human resources development and institution building. So I have been telling my interlocutors and my friends in Bangladesh over the last 2 years, it's important to listen to those voices of private companies. So in my case, Japanese companies, which have been already operating inside the country and redress and address those issues and challenges of those companies. Over the last 1 year, I would say the government here made a tremendous effort in spite of the difficulty of corona pandemic, under the strong leadership of Honorable Prime Minister and the advisor, Mr. Salman Rahman, also played a very, very important part, not to mention the efforts by BIDA, BESA, and PMO and other government agencies. So I recognize the very good progress in terms of a business environment in favor of Japanese companies and other foreign investors. So I would say doing business in Bangladesh has become somewhat easier, or to a certain extent easier, over the one year. But I'm sure that there are some distances to go in order for those prospective investors to say, yes, Bangladesh has become one of the best investment environment. So I think it's important for the government to continue to listen to those voices expressed by foreign investors. If I may, I would like to touch upon several priority issues for Japanese investors. The top and foremost is, of course, trade facilitation, in particular, customs clearance issue. So this needs to be continuously addressed, no doubt about that. And the second important issue is trade-related financing, and in particular, how import transactions are settled. In this country, still letter of credit issued by bank is the main methodology of settling import transactions. Whereas in most countries in Asia, telegraphic transfer is the main methodology of settling import transactions. But I'm afraid still there are strict restrictions upon the usage of telegraphic transfer. So I think that needs to be improved. And I must point out that in Asia, there are 2 countries where still letter of credit is the main methodology of settling import transactions. One is Bangladesh, and another is Pakistan. So I think this is a very, very important issue for Bangladesh to expand trade, particularly smooth import and less cumbersome procedure for import transactions. And third issue I often hear from Japanese company is improvement of a business environment inside export processing zone. This will be related to the better environment for special economic zone. One of the example is the cash incentives given to RMG exporters to new market. So new market is, of course, outside Europe and US. And there is 4% cash incentive is eligible for non-type A companies, namely joint venture and 100% domestic companies. But unfortunately, as yet, this 4% cash incentive of export of RMG products is not available for type A 100% foreign companies. But this is a very, very symbolic issue. If Bangladesh government is keen to have those foreign companies who are willing to export to those non-traditional markets, this needs to be addressed as well. And fourth issue is workforce development, skills development. And I'm sure that foreign companies, FDIs, will contribute to this important issue, as well as the introduction of technology. So, and Japan is ready to cooperate with the government and other related agencies for the purpose of skills development or TVET education or further workforce development. And I think today's discussion didn't really touch upon this FTA or EPA, but when you think about graduation, I think building FTA network with major trading partners will be a very, very important tool that Bangladesh needs to equip with. And these are the points I wanted to mention. And also at the very last, I want to briefly mention that grafting culture or speed money request, these are also rather difficult issues to deal with for foreign investors. I don't really think that today's index or today's discussions didn't touch upon this aspect of grafting culture. But in order to enhance the image of Bangladesh, as well as to really facilitate business environment, these rampant practices of grafting culture needs to go away sooner rather than later. Before concluding, I want to mention next year, 2022, will be the year in which Japan and Bangladesh will celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations. And next year will be also the year in which Dhaka Metro will be opening, and also Arai Hajau Special Economic Zone, the first Japanese special economic zone, will be ready to open. So I do really hope that 2022 will be a very, very important year for our economic partnership, and we will see a memorable development to that end. So I'm sure that next year, investment from Japan will expand, trade with Japan will increase, and the number of Japanese companies will extend. And I really would like to continue to cooperate with Honorable Advisor to Prime Minister, a PMO, a BIDA, or all the organizations which are participating today, including FBCCI, FICCI, MCCI, DCCI, Build, Policy Exchange, and others. So next year, I'm really looking forward to making further contribution to the economy of Bangladesh, as well as business partnership. Japanese government and private companies are going to join hands, and we really would like to have win-win situation. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to further development of this index. Thank you so much. Onek Donobad.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Japan has been a steadfast partner of Bangladesh in all its phases, and it's very heartening to hear you say that Bangladesh is the one in the China +1 strategy of Japan. We definitely wish for more Japanese investment. Thank you also for raising specific issues which are leading policymakers in the private sector is here. And I'm sure that he will have taken note, as will have the executive chairman of BIDA. So without more, I will request our special guest, the Executive Chairman of BIDA, Mr. Sirazul Islam, to kindly deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I am audible. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman MP, Honorable Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister for Private Industries and Investment, Distinguished Chair, Mr. Nihad Kabir, Excellency Ambassador of Japan, Mr. Ito Naiko, distinguished panelists, participants, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. It's a long time. The discussion has been going on. It's more than 2 hours, and I can see that people are leaving, and I have been told that our chief guest, he has another meeting to join, so I'll be very brief. As you know, that BIDA, as the focal point for the government, has been working for the improvement of business environment in the country, particularly based on the ease of doing business ranking and indicators and assumptions based on those indicators set by the World Bank. And during the last 2 years, we made a lot of improvements as per the indicators set by World Bank, but unfortunately, the World Bank dropped their reporting. No problem. We have already resolved that we'll continue our reform initiative. I had a talk with the Honorable Cabinet Secretary day before yesterday that we will continue it, and I think dropping the World Bank ranking gives us an opportunity to broaden our scope also. And thanks to MCCI and policy change that they have already come up with a much broader indicators encompassing many other things which were not included in the World Bank ranking because there was something global, and they used to say that it's just the benchmark. You can expand on this, and now I think we have the scope for expanding our ease of doing business as we understand it. From the presentation, I could understand that you are setting the benchmark for this year, and it will be reviewed every year so that we can see where we are, whether we could improve on any particular indicator or we are falling behind. So that will be really good for us also. I believe that BIDA will be working closely with MCCI and other business association and also policy exchange. As policy exchange and MCCI are coming up with these indicators, I think this will help BIDA framing its own strategic plan for improvement of doing business. I don't like to take any more time. Just before I conclude, I would like to thank MCCI and Policy Exchange for arranging this report launching and also working on this very innovative indicators, which is homegrown, as it is mentioned. And I'm also thankful to Excellency Ito Naiko, who talked really good about Bangladesh. And yes, I took note of the specific problems, and we are also working on this. We have to try more for realizing all these issues, which have been talked about for a longer time. Before I finish, let me just remind you all that BIDA is going to have a big event next month, 28 to 29 November, Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, BIDA, is going to organize the Bangladesh International Investment Summit 2021. Honorable Prime Minister has kindly consented to inaugurate that big event on 28 at 10 in the morning. Considering the COVID situation, the summit is designed as a hybrid one. Those who are interested, we are most welcome to attend physically. But those who are interested but who cannot come because of some COVID restrictions, etc., they can also join virtually. From BIDA, I would like to invite all of you to join that summit. I have shared the link in the chat box through which you can register. And our embassies from abroad who joined, I would like to request our excellencies and our officers there to disseminate this information so that the potential investors can register but to know what is going on in Bangladesh, because that event will showcase Bangladesh as a potential investment destination. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us despite not feeling too well, staying with us throughout. And thank you also for your kind invitation to join the summit. I know you've taken note of the points raised both by the index and by the speakers. Before moving on to our honorable chief guest at the end of our program, I would just like to submit that from MCCI and Policy Exchange's point of view, this is the 50th year of our independence and the 100th birth anniversary, the centenary of the father of our nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And it is a very small attempt on the part of MCCI and PE to provide this index as a public good in honor of these two momentous occasions in the history of our nation. It is a great honor and a privilege for us to do so. I would now like to invite the Honorable Chief Guest, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister, to kindly deliver his remarks and also to thank him for being with us for this long webinar. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chairman BIDA, His Excellency the Ambassador of Japan, Bangladesh, presidents of the various chambers, business personalities, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. I'll be very brief because I was told that this it would be 1.5 hours. In fact, I was told 1 hour, 15 minutes. I had kept 15 minutes extra. It's now nearly 2 hours. And I have a very important meeting to go to right now. So at the very outset, what I will do is I would like to really congratulate MCCI and Policy Exchange for taking this initiative. I personally feel very happy and proud. I became president of MCCI when I was 38 years old in 1989. And I don't know whether I still hold the record. At that time, I was the youngest. I don't know if I still hold. I think Nasim may have beaten me. I don't know at what age he became president. But
no, sir, you still hold the record, unfortunately for me.
So when I see, whenever I come to any MCCI function, it is coming back, it's part of my family. So it brings back very old and very pleasant memories. What brings me even more pleasant memories is that many of the young people who I meet, compared to me, they are young. I was very close to their fathers. And I'm still very close to many of their fathers. So the fathers who are alive, I am very close to them. And those who have passed away, I was very close to them. So For me, it's a completely special occasion and feeling when I'm attending any MCCI function. The initiative which you have taken is really remarkable, and like the president of FICCI mentioned, she's absolutely correct. I keep criticizing the trade bodies, and my point was that when I became president of FBCCI, I tried to bring some reforms in the trade bodies and saying that the trade bodies must do much more than what they are doing, rather than just being lobbyists for getting benefits from the government. The trade body's job is also to do some, kind of research and kind of work. And I think this is the first time some trade body has really, of course, all trade bodies are doing research and they do contribute to in many ways. Whenever we have the annual budget meetings, in the stakeholders meetings, and the government definitely learns a lot from the trade bodies and from their experience. But this initiative which MCCI has taken in collaboration with Policy Exchange, I think is a remarkable initiative. And although this initiative was taken before we heard that the Doing Business Index of the World Bank is going to be discontinued, I think the timing for you has been also very, very fortunate. So what has happened is that while we have lost one index, coming with a homegrown index really gives us this thing. The other thing which I was very, very impressed with, and I must congratulate Masrur for that, is both on the, the methodology which has been followed is actually, it is something which, we would be able to, because what happens with the index, which you have rightly pointed out, that the most important thing with an index is the credibility of that index. And the moment you want to see the credibility of the index, you have to go into what methodology has been followed for creating that index and also for creating the ranking. And Nihad is absolutely correct that when we were doing business with the World Bank, we were always questioning the methodology. In fact, she was the first one who brought it to my attention that we should actually look into the methodology. And of course, Masrur was still with the World Bank IFC group at that time. And that's when we got that famous book from them, which gave us the assumptions. We had never ever even seen that. And then Chairman BIDA took that and got a full team in BIDA, started understanding how they do and then that background went in. So with the homegrown index, I think, and if the methodology is good and if we can build a credibility on this index, then I think this will go a long way to helping improve the business climate in Bangladesh. So I would just add here that in order to have acceptability, credibility of the index, this thing, you would have to, what we have launched it today, but I think what MCCI, and not only MCCI, we have the DCCI here today, we have also the FICCI over here, then you should go to the trade bodies, you should go to the trade associations. You should make this thing known to everybody. It's not just saying an index, but the methodology, what methodology you have followed. And the results which you have got are very, very interesting results actually. The fact that there is this notion that Dhaka and Chittagong are, account for everything in Bangladesh, but that's not the case. In the other divisions that is happening, a lot of things is happening. And in fact, what I really like about this index is that it truly covers Bangladesh, because the Doing Business Index of this thing was not only Dhaka Chittagong, it was only limited to the metropolitan areas of Dhaka Chittagong. So, from a statistics point of view also, I think that index was pretty screwed. So when I was first told that it was skewed towards just a perception rather than what the actual reality, ground reality was. So what is very interesting, the findings are very interesting, which really goes to the, and I think it really goes to to prove that Honorable Prime Minister's main intention that we should the development of Bangladesh should not be centered to Dhaka, and that it should also be completely, it should be completely disseminated all over Bangladesh, and that is, I think, what this your index has come. Actually, if I had more time, I really like that slide, which shows you that not only does it show you the the large, small, and medium industry, and also the Dhaka, Chittagong, Khulna, that slide, that really talks a lot about the fact that we have actually succeeded, and that our development is not only centered to Dhaka. I think what I would advise the MCCI and also all other trade bodies, that of course you will be doing this on an annual basis, and I'm sure that as you keep repeating it, you are going to improve your, you will be improving the quality and the but what I would really like you to do now is to also hold a seminar or where you should involve the government agencies and senior government officers, and disseminate this to them also, so that if we can actually say that this is a credible, objective index, and if first you have for us to accept it and embrace it. If we within Bangladesh, if you can succeed in doing that, then automatically I think internationally also we will be able to do that. So that's very, very good. The other thing which I would like to, I was very interested to hear, and I would really like to encourage you to do that, what Nihad had said about doing a logistics index. I think that is very, very important and very crucial. If you can do a logistics index, and that will also help the government going forward to take a lot of important decisions. I'm sorry, I really would have liked to discuss these matters much more in detail with you, but I'm really running very, very late. As Executive Chairman BIDA has already said, he has taken note of the points raised by His Excellency, the Japanese ambassador, and His Excellency has actually raised these points with me before also. Some of them are being addressed, and I think some of them are overdue. I'm surprised that it's still not been done. So we will revisit these, and I would like to thank him for, Japan has been a very, very old and very, very close friend of Bangladesh. And I would like to really thank him for reassuring us that the Japanese investment is going to continue and expand, and Japanese trade is going to, Japanese-Bangladesh trade is going to expand. So I would really like to thank His Excellency for the assurance which he has given us. And with these words, again, thanking MCCI for taking this initiative, which I think is a very, very excellent initiative, and for inviting me to the launching ceremony as the chief guest and giving me an opportunity to say a few words. In this COVID area, I hope and pray that all of you will remain safe and well. And with these words, I conclude. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, Bangladesh Chirojibi Ho.
Thank you very much indeed for your kind words, and particularly MCCI certainly treats itself as your home chamber. So we are very happy that you were able to be with us in this launch. We know that you're pressed for time, sir. I will now. I would like to
if you allow me, I will leave. You can continue with the rest of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may invite our Senior Vice President, Mr. Nihad Khan, to kindly give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, President Nihad Kabir. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to you all, respected leaders of the nation, your excellencies, presidents, and senior representatives of chambers and associations, ladies and gentlemen, our most valued members, guests, and fellow MCCI board members. This is indeed a milestone day for MCCI Dhaka and the launching event of BBX Index in the 100th birth anniversary year of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Golden Jubilee year of Bangladesh's independence, as said earlier by our president, is part of our humble and continuing quest to serve business better. The publication of BBX, details of which you have now a better idea of, will hopefully help business persons, both in the country and abroad, understand and do business in a better manner in the exciting times ahead for Bangladesh's development. With better knowledge and awareness of the opportunities, improvements made and being made, problems and hurdles, we can improve our strategies, plans, and business operations. On behalf of MCCI Dhaka, I extend the most sincere vote of thanks to the chief guest, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman MP, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister on Private Industry Investment, for taking the time out of his busy schedule to attend the virtual launching program. We miss much our special guest, Mr. Mohammad Tafazzal Hussain Mia, Secretary PMO, who has become indisposed. We pray for his early recovery. I would like to thank our esteemed panelists and others who spoke for making the interactions fruitful. The support has always inspired us to take new initiatives that can aid the overall business climate of Bangladesh. Mr. Muhammad Jashim Uddin, President of FBCCI, and our guest of honor who had to leave early, spoke very well, and we are thankful for his presence and encouraging us in our work. The very young and dynamic President of DCCI, Mr. Rizwan Rahman, mentioned about arbitration, amongst other points in his speech, and we are happy that the Bangladesh International Arbitration Center, led by our great business leader, Mr. Mahbub Rahman, his father, and Mr. Muhammad Rumi Ali, are endeavoring hard to support business with this important aspect in resolving disputes. Mr. Abul Kasem Khan, Chairman of BILD and former President DCCI, has encouraged us by saying that this was a timely initiative. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Mr. Syed Nasim Manzur, our past president, mentioned that the BBX will be a work in progress and we'll keep improving it as we go along. Our inspirational and agile past president have always aided the efforts with his vice counsel and ideas. Thank you, Mr. Manzur. His Excellency, the Japanese ambassador, Mr. Ito, spoke about his government's deep commitment to Bangladesh and its developmental efforts, especially the ongoing infrastructure projects in train in the country. He highlighted certain problems being faced by Japanese business persons, and he also mentioned that to me at another event earlier and suggested that these be resolved, especially the banking ones. We thank him for his kind thoughts and suggestions and highlighting 50 years of Japan-Bangladesh diplomatic relationship coming up in 2022. Our very busy guest of honor, BIDA Chairman, Mr. Muhammad Sirazul Islam, encouraged us much with his kind words. We wish him great success with the big investment summit coming up soon. Chief guest, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman MP, is an integral part of MCCI Dhaka, and as you heard, its youngest ever president, and continues to inspire, encourage, and support us in all our activities. His eloquent speech has further encouraged us to forge ahead with our mission. He has exhorted us to help build credibility for our homegrown index and also spread it across all chambers and associations in our country. We take your advice with great honor. His comments were very insightful and will help us to take this initiative forward in a more efficient manner. President MCCI, MS Nihad Kabir, deserves special mention for her dynamic leadership and the way she has steered the organization of the last few years has been truly commendable and remarkable. She only came back a few hours ago from an international place, long flight, but still she's here with us despite her jet lag and tiredness. Thank you, Ms. Nihad Kabir. I extend my sincere thanks Dr. M. Masrur Reaz, very resourceful, and his team members for putting in wholehearted efforts in conducting the research for this publication. This presentation, keynote presentation, was insightful and illuminating. Our gratitude to him for sharing the knowledge with us here today. The Chamber Secretariat, led by the ever hardworking Farooq Ahmed, he is not here. He's away in Geneva on a mission. From there, he is coordinating everything for this event. Deserves special mention along with his teammates for all the efforts in successfully staging this landmark event. I must most sincerely apologize for the technical glitches in the beginning, which we tried our best to overcome. Ladies and gentlemen, about 180 of you from across the world, including many excellences, Malaysian High Commissioner in Bangladesh, MS Hasna, and our ambassadors in Spain, Bahrain, senior diplomatic officials in our various missions abroad, On behalf of MCCI, I would once again like to state that it has been a pleasure to have you all here. Many of you have given your opinions and suggestions, which we shall take on board as we move forward. We are grateful to you for making this launching program lively and effective and for taking valuable time out of our busy schedule and being with us here today. Thank you and stay safe and well. Best wishes. Back to Ms. Nihad Kabir, our President, for concluding the event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nisar Khan, Senior Vice President of MCCI. Dr. Reaz, if you would like to conclude on behalf of PE, and before handing the floor to you, I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to all of you who have attended this program and stayed with us throughout. Thank you. Masrur?
Thank you, Madam President. I think we are at the end of a long but very worthwhile and very exciting, engaging sessions. I won't take any time except for joining you and Mr. Anis Khan in thanking all the distinguished participants, the speakers, the panelists, the participants, and the representatives from media who have joined us today and have supported us with their attention, time, and patience. And we look forward to, from MCCI and Policy Exchange team, we will be circulating the report both online on our websites as well as hard copies to all of you. And anybody who's interested, please do contact us, either MCCI Secretariat or Policy Exchange Office. And we will be rolling out, as the Honorable Chief Guest said, engaging government and private sector. This was part of our plan that following the finalization of this year's report next week, we will engage in a dialogue, continued dialogue with the government as well as the private stakeholders to take forward some of the important messages emerging from BBX 2021. So thank you, everyone. And I would like to especially acknowledge the support we got, and the leadership we got from Madam President, Barrister Nihad Kabir, former President Syed Nasim Manzur, Secretary General Mr. Farooq, and Mr. Anis Khan, Vice President, and also Anus Chowdhury, Dr. Ali Zafar, Faria Chowdhury, Hasibul Karim, and Rodoshi Tasim from the Policy Exchange team. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. With that, I think we're at the end of the program. And once more, wishing you all a very good evening. And please stay safe, stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next time.
Thank you, Masrur.
Thank you very much.
Rupali Appa, thank you. Thank you for your time. And BIDA Executive Chairman Mohoday, sir, we wish you a quick recovery. And thank you for sitting. Thank you for sitting. We're very grateful.
It was interesting.
And sir,
we need some sort of alternative, so it's already there, so we can use it.
Thank you. Thank you for actually.
Thank you, MCCI.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vidya.
Thank you, Vidya.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting and very fruitful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nihad. Sorry, I missed your call, but
Yes, that's fine. I got your comments. Kesa, thank you for joining.
thanks.
Good to see you at least on video.
Thank you very, very much.
And thanks to all our consulates, embassies who joined. Our ambassador to Madrid also, embassy to Madrid is on the line. So I think we will log off now. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Congratulations, Ms. President and the team members and Masrur.
Thank you, Anis Bhai. Thanks for your support.
Shazad, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.